What are the best golf clubs for golfers with shallow attack angles or shallow swings? In this episode of the Second Swing Thoughts podcast, we're going to break down your best options with Second Swing Master Fitter Max Busch, plus take a look at the latest news in golf and a little preview for this week's Open Championship. That's all coming up on this episode of the Second Swing Thoughts podcast. Hey golfers, welcome on into another episode of the Second Swing Thoughts podcast. I'm your host, Sean Bauer. Drew, he'll be joining the show later as he sat down with Second Swing Master Fitter Max Busch. Of course, talking about the best golf clubs for golfers with shallow attack angles. Of course, last week, Drew and Max talked about those with steep attack angles. Now we're flipping the script, so lots of really good information there. Just some clubs that typically work best, plus just some tendencies that Max sees in the fitting bay. You know, if you fit that profile and are kind of looking for some options of where to start, he gives you some great insights into those. Plus, we had a crazy week in golf from the Scottish Open to the Evian Championship. Just lots of fun stuff. And then, of course, last week was almost like a mini launch season as there was new clubs coming out from many, many manufacturers. So we'll take a quick look at those here coming up. But let's get right into the turn and right into the Scottish Open where Chris Gotterup picked up his second career PGA Tour win, winning at the Genesis Scottish Open, beating big names like Rory McIlroy, and really he kind of controlled the Sunday once he had the lead and kind of kept everyone else at bay and never really gave it back. And really impressive stuff from him. And he has a crazy what's in the bag. We'll take a look at that here in a little bit. But pretty impressive stuff from him. You know, it's that link style course. We don't get to see it a lot here in the States. So it's always, a nice little tune-up for the Open Championship, which is happening this week. And for Gotterup, it was huge because, it helped get him into this week's Open Championship. So really, really good stuff there from him. But let's get right into his bag because this thing is absolutely crazy. Now, nothing too astonishing at the top. Playing a Ping G440 LST, 9 degrees, hazardous smoke black shaft in it. And then even his fairway, he goes right to a 5-wood, 18-degree TaylorMade QI35. So once again, nothing earth-shattering there. But then we get into the bulk of his bag, and this is where it gets really, really fun. He's going with a TaylorMade RSI TP UDI 1-iron. Not only is that club, it's 9 years old at this point. I'm not saying that utility irons or driving irons are rare, but to see an actual 1-iron in play, absolutely crazy. Love that club in his bag. You're going to see a lot more people, maybe not playing 1-irons, but you'll see a lot more driving irons in players' bags this week specifically as they try to, battle the elements and the wind that you see out at the Open Championship typically. And then another really cool addition here in his irons, going with the Bridgestone Tour B 220 MBs. These things are absolutely beautiful. He's the only player on the PGA Tour playing Bridgestone irons. Of course, everyone knows Bridgestone kind of for their balls, but these are some gorgeous, gorgeous blades. Very cool. Make sure you take a look at them on our website, on our What's in the Bag blog, or check out our friends over at Golf WRX. They have actual photos of his bag. And then wedges, going with some TaylorMade Milgram 4s for his 46 and 52. Then he's playing the MG Proto for his 5660, and then goes Spider X Tour for the putter. So big win for him. Really cool what's in the bag. You always got to enjoy some of those more unique setups that you see, especially when you get, a almost 10-year-old 1-iron and then some irons that no one else plays on tour. So really good stuff there. And, of course, Gotterup will be playing in this week's Open Championship, which returns to Royal Portrush in Northern Ireland. Last time it was here, Shane Lowry captured his first and only major championship. And it was a fun tournament. Now it's 6 years ago. I was about to say 5, but 6 years ago in 2019. So it's going to be a sweet test. If you've been watching, Golf Channel or, you see Grant Horvat's YouTube channel, you get to see it. It's a classic link style course. Lot of trouble. It sounds like the back nine is, expecting to play a little harder. But you just got to love links golf just in general. If you've never gotten the chance to go play, whether it's be overseas or, in the United States equivalent of links courses, highly recommend. It is a different style of golf. The wind plays such a factor. Obviously, if the wind is up, which it typically is, the club selection and the ball flights are just so much different. And then you have the weird undulations in the courses. And I think my favorite part of the Open is just the creativity you see around the greens. Here in the States, nothing wrong with it, but you see, a lot of 60-degree lob wedge, just get it high, let it land soft, and, roll out just a little. Well, at the Open, you're going to see lots of bump and runs. You're going to see putters from way off the green, hybrids, fairway woods, as guys have to try to kind of use their imagination to get the ball close to the hole. So always a really fun test. And, of course, Drew and I, we've been doing picks for all the majors this year, and we will reveal our picks later in the show. I'll reveal his and mine as see if Drew can finally take me down after the 3-tournament win streak that I am on. But yeah, Open Championship begins Thursday morning, so really fun stuff. Really excited. Looking forward to the year's final major. And speaking of major championships, go on to the LPGA side, where it was the Evian Championship over in France. And if you haven't seen the highlights from this or know what happened, it might be the most bonkers finish I've ever seen in any tournament, regardless of level. So Grace Kim double bogeyed, I believe it was 13, to move her 3 back of Lottie Woad, the amateur, who had made a big run to take the clubhouse lead, or his 4 back with 4 or 5, 6 holes to go, and she gets to she birdies 15. Sorry, birdies 15 and 16. So now she is 1 back of the clubhouse lead and 1 back of her playing partner, Gino Thitikul. And then she gets to the 18th hole, trailing Thitikul by 1 and trailing Woad by 1. She has a 4 hybrid, her Strixon ZXi 4 hybrid, that she sticks to within tap-in range for an eagle. And then Thitikul actually missed. Titleist was actually 2 strokes up. I apologize. She missed a birdie putt that would have clinched the championship on the 72nd hole. So the tap-in eagle gets them to a playoff, and that's just where things started. Then on the first playoff hole, Grace Kim finds herself in the fairway off the tee again, but this time, no such luck. She actually puts her ball, and it skips into the hazard. Thitikul puts hers, she missed the green, but, in a spot where you're thinking she's going to get up and down. So for Kim, you got to feel a little defeated. You went into the hazard. You're thinking your opponent's going to get birdie here, trying to do everything you can. Well, what does she do? She chips in for birdie and kind of flips the script on Gino, who actually ended up getting up and down, but it was not as easy as you would have thought. So a big pressure putt there after missing the one on the 72nd hole. And then we get to the second playoff hole, playing the 18th hole. Once again, 3rd straight time. And Kim hits the green in 2 and knocks in another eagle putt to claim her first career major. So really, really cool, exciting finish there. You can check out our Instagram page for a look at some of what's in her bag. She's a Cleveland Strixon player as they continue just the heater they've been on this year with players winning all across the world, all across every tour. Been a big year for them. Speaking of big years, we had some big launches last week. Of course, the new Titleist T-Series irons are here. Titleist irons always one of the most popular irons, definitely on the PGA Tour, but along with us, average golfers as well. We have a great breakdown out from TPI on these specific irons, so make sure you check out that swing report on our YouTube channel. But T100, T150 are back. Slight changes. The T100 is actually playing a little stronger lofted, which is LPGA players wanted. Most of them have still been playing the T100S due to those stronger lofts. So that was something that they wanted in it. And then for PGA Tour players, they wanted a little more bounce. So by making them stronger and then de-lofting them a little bit, you add a little more bounce into them. So really cool stuff there. And then newest in the lineup, there's no longer a T200. There's now a T250 player's distance iron there. And that comes in at standard spec. And then also brand new here is their launch spec, which is a weaker lofted T250. It kind of lines up with kind of Titleist's, like what we'd expect in like a CB type iron. Pitching wedge playing about 47 degrees. So almost in that higher lofted category, but they call it the launch spec, and a big emphasis of that is for their junior players especially. Sometimes they struggle to get the ball up into the air with their irons, and Titleist started to notice that because of that, they were almost compromising their golf swing to make up for that. So this was kind of a solution for them to get that ball up in the air with just a little more loft for those players. Then they have the T350. The T250 also comes in utility iron along with a U505. So big stuff from Titleist. You also saw Scotty Cameron limited Phantom Blacks get released this week. Those are available for pre-order on secondswing.com. Kind of a blacked out version of, Scotty's famous Phantom line. Really clean looking, really cool. 4 models. You got the 5.5, the 7, the 9.2R, and an 11 there. So check those out on secondswing.com. Ping had a couple releases last week. Of course, their I-240 irons. They've seen so much success with I-210, I-230. Here's the next iteration of that. They look good, feel good. I mean, kind of what you expect from Ping. They do look a little bigger than the I-230s, in my opinion, and that's because I play I-230s. So for me, that was one noticeable difference. But based on the testing you saw with Jake and Drew on our YouTube channel, they still perform like you'd expect a Ping to perform. So, and then Callaway added to their Apex AI line with an AI 150, kind of a more players type hollow body iron there. So good stuff from Callaway as well. Of course, all these clubs you can get fit for now at Second Swing. So if you're looking for some new irons, a lot of great new options just hit the market. So make sure you check those out and see if they are a fit for your game. But yeah, that wraps up the turn. We're going to get right into our main segment of the show. We're talking best clubs. We've kind of been breaking it down, by certain, swing types, swing speeds and whatnot. We've done fast swing speeds, slow swing speeds. Last week we did steep attack angles. Well, this week we are doing shallow attack angles, for those players that, typically don't take a divot with their irons, really swing up on the ball with their driver. Kind of fit that category. So Max Busch sat down with Drew here, kind of discussing some of the best clubs that he's seen in the fitting bay and just general tendencies he kind of notices with players that kind of fit this profile.
Okay, now welcoming back on the Second Swing Thoughts podcast, we've got special guest Max Busch, club fitter, master club fitter from our Minneapolis store. Got to throw the master in there.
Yeah, just to make sure everybody knows.
I mean, here's the deal. You guys go through a ton of training, and it doesn't really stop because every year there's new products to master, so to speak, right?
Exactly right.
New shafts, new products, and new fitting processes to master. So we'll give you the master in the title.
I appreciate that.
Last time with Max, we talked about the, best products here so far in 2025.
Yep.
As it pertains to a steep swinger. So, someone really digging their irons and wedges into the turf, or someone that might have that low rising ball flight with the driver. Today we're going to flip it and go to a shallow swing. So I guess now I asked you this question with the steep swings, but I want to do the same thing in terms of numbers. I know most people don't have their attack angle just on the top of their head if they haven't been in a fitting, but what would be considered a shallow attack angle for irons and or driver?
Sure. Driver, anything, I would say, well, you have your ideal range of maybe down 1 to up 4, we'll say.
Okay.
Anything over that, if you get, up 5, up 6, up 7, the left side of the golf course just comes into play a lot more. So I would say that's kind of where you would qualify, maybe 2 up or 2 shallow with the driver.
Okay.
When it comes to irons, for me, it's kind of anything less than down 1. When you see the positive number of attack with the irons, it's
troublesome.
It can be,
yeah,
depending on the player. But in that situation, I'm just always looking at dynamic loft of how they deliver that club.
Right. So, because for these players, typically it might only be with a short wedge or, a certain punch shot maybe where they actually take a divot. Otherwise, they might not take a divot at all.
Yes.
And they're basically picking the ball clean with that shallow swing. So,
Right.
So I know let's kind of get into the club types here, and I guess it's a little different with driver because in a sense with driver, you chase this high launch low spin combination, and one way to do that is to hit up on the ball a lot.
Yep.
there is probably a point where it becomes concerning if you're 7 up at 7 degrees hitting up on it and you're losing control of it. But is there a driver that you've seen seems to be best for achieving that sort of high launch, low spin combination for some of these players?
I wouldn't say necessarily a specific driver, but anytime I see up, 5, 6, 7, you actually have a lot of different clubs to play with because this player is going to take spin off most any driver.
Right.
So you could, give them a little more forgiving driver that's maybe has less face deflection on if they hit one off the toe. Normally it's going to go low and left, but getting away with a little more of a forgiving, higher MOI driver is definitely comes into play for people that are up that much, which I've actually found can be, a big benefit for them, obviously, because it'll just keep more stuff in play. A majority of the guys I see up 5, 6, 7 are dealing with that big pull hook. So, a lot of weight on the toe and just a higher MOI driver has been working best for me this year.
Yeah.
Not any specific model, really.
Sure. So I think that's also, I'm sure, the really important part with drivers for these players is the loft, because if you hit up on it a lot, all of a sudden, for anybody with maybe even in like an average swing speed, sometimes like 10.5 degrees could be too much. It launches it too high, and all of a sudden you're losing some distance there, even if the spin's kind of low, right? So you want to try to find the way to maintain that, and sometimes I imagine that means trying a different loft or adjusting the hosel, things like that. But it's good to know, though, because I do think nowadays the manufacturers are doing such a good job of managing 100%. The spin rate. So like these players don't have that concern at all.
Right. And even in, your max high MOI driver spin is, very controlled these days. Right. So it's like just giving them as much spin as they can. I usually, tell them maybe a golf ball change is a good idea. Let's go to a higher spinning golf ball. Just switching from, say, like Pro V1 to Pro V1X on driver can add, 300-400 RPMs of spin, which on average is huge. Yeah. So, but just higher MOI drivers, typically a little lower lofted is what we're going with. So
sure. So into the mini drivers and or fairway woods, kind of bunching these into one, is there a model or brand even that comes to mind for players that are maybe, I guess with this particular category, they're probably coming in relatively around 0, probably, or maybe even slightly above 0. With a fairway wood, what does that look like for you?
Yeah, I mean, the profile of all paying fairway woods is a little bit smaller top to bottom. This typically has worked a little better for me. I mean, if you're swinging up at a fairway wood, the drop kick miss, if you would, is in play. So just making basically that leading edge a little bit smaller top to bottom. I found that those have been working pretty well. It's funny, the ZXI fairway woods actually have been working really solid for me for anyone kind of floating 2 up to 2 down. They changed a little bit of like the center of gravity. Most everybody does year over year, right? But they moved it a little bit lower, and just having that slightly lower center of gravity to where typically if you're swinging up at a fairway wood, you're going to catch it on the bottom of the equator. So just having a lower center of gravity down there maintains ball speed, maintains spin. So those two have been better for me this year in the shallow swing department. Yeah.
It's interesting that it's, we talked a lot about tricks on irons for the steeper swingers, and then we get the fairway woods here that seem to be kind of appealing more to the shallow swings, but nonetheless, it's good to hear, because the ZXI fairways, it seems like they don't get a ton of the marketability out there versus the company's irons for sure, and even drivers. But clearly there's something working there, and you can totally see the kind of the science behind how a shallow face of a fairway wood can be beneficial for players that coming in pretty, neutral or even shallow. Right. I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah, because if you get top to bottom less, then where they're hitting it down low is going to be more towards the equator of the club, right?
And if you're getting down on fairway wood, you would probably need a deeper, taller club face with more area, high, as we talked about with like the TaylorMade drivers in the last segment. So, so as it pertains to hybrids and utility irons now, again, this is one where I would almost probably argue in a lot of cases, not necessarily, but there's probably fewer utility irons in play for these players.
Typically.
But anyway, is there any model in particular for maybe shallow swings that you've seen work in either of these categories?
Yeah, like you said, typically if somebody's a shallower swinger, a driving iron may not necessarily be in play. With that being said, I've actually seen the U505 from Titleist work pretty well for more shallow swinging individuals who want that utility iron. Just the width of the sole, and then they've got so much weight just right behind that face. The more weight you get down low, the easier it is for a shallow swinger to kind of launch that and consistently launch it. As the hybrids go, it's tough to not go back to that G440.
Yeah.
It's just that same thing, a little bit almost smaller profile top to bottom.
Yeah.
So if they're catching it on the upswing, you're still catching pretty close to that equator.
Yep.
And then spin consistency is just one of the better features in a golf club out there that I've seen work in the fitting bay.
It's wild how overwhelming the votes were in Fitter's Choice for hybrids for G440. In the previous segment, we talked about steep swings and how G440 was your choice for the hybrids, and then also in the so sounds like if you need a hybrid, G440 you really can't go wrong. And as someone who I actually like how they, when I did some testing, I hit the 2 and the 7, which are very different in loft, right? But I think they also are designed to be uniquely positions for each of those golfers that might play one, right? Because most people, you're not going to have like a 2 hybrid and a 7 hybrid in the bag. Right. A 2 hybrid is probably a faster swing speed with maybe a little lower launch, right? Could be a steeper attack angle, but it's designed in that way to fit that player. 7 hybrid, got you see a lot of loft. It's pretty shallow. It's going to help get the ball in the air.
Exactly right.
And they've designed the set of hybrids progressively so that it can be beneficial for all those players. So I think they've done a really good job with G440 hybrids.
And I guess to your point, Drew, the say 2, 3, and 4 hybrids have been a little better for the steep swingers.
Yeah.
The higher lofted hybrids very good for the shallow swingers.
Yeah.
But yes, that's a great point. A little bit shallower on the higher lofted ones, just able to hit that center of the face a little easier. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been the G series.
Yes.
Ping, they never miss with the
they've
hybrids.
yet to disappoint. That's for sure.
Now to the irons, and again, we're talking about players that probably don't take much of a divot when it comes to their irons or mid irons, especially. Is there any model in particular through half of 2025 that you've noticed has been successful for these golfers?
Yeah, so I had another situation like this very recently in the fitting bay. Pretty good player. He's a gentleman. I think he was a 4 or 5 handicap. Any player's iron or blade that I gave him just couldn't seem to find the center of that face, basically. And then we kind of just on a whim tried the I-530 from Ping in the power spec setting too. Okay. So, it was a 26.5 degree 7 iron. Yeah. But when I'm looking at this gentleman's dynamic loft, he's delivering his apex, which is 30 degrees with 34 degrees of loft. So even when we got him down to 26, it was, 30 degrees. And it's a little thinner sole on a player's distance iron. And top down, it looks great. So he loved it. But just having that extra weight on the perimeter of the down low with the I-530, it was just so easy for him to launch that ball, spin it enough, and then it stopped on a dime. Yeah. So the I-530 has worked really well for me in that.
That's a good one.
Shallow kind of swing. Same with the P790 from TaylorMade.
Okay.
Always just looking at dynamic loft, kind of matching it up with typically shallow swingers are kind of flipping that club just a little bit at impact. So there's usually a little more loft on it than maybe there should be. But yeah, just going a little stronger lofted and slightly thinner soled iron has worked pretty well.
Because it seems like for most players that have a shallow swing, they don't have a problem getting the ball in the air and keeping it up there, right? They're not having as much shaft lean at impact, and so that is increasing the loft that they show at impact, which is launching it higher. And so I can see why, maybe a distance-oriented iron or a stronger lofted iron is really beneficial for them, because they're probably, launching really high, and maybe it's spinning a lot, ballooning a lot in the air.
Right.
And they're losing some distance there. And of course, in a windy day, that can be also detrimental to have something that just floats up there.
Right.
So anything that can lower that a little bit and decrease the dynamic loft for those players can be really, really beneficial. So like we did with the steep swingers, I also wanted to have this discussion on bounce and grind with wedges. So we've talked about all the categories from kind of driver down to irons. For shallow swingers, there's probably a different set or a different type of sole that these players should try to get in the bag for wedges. What would you kind of describe is sort of the best course of action for players that have maybe a shallow attack angle with their wedges?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, probably going to look towards a little bit of a lower bounce. We want that kind of that leading edge to be as close to the ground within reason, right? But like, we talked about the 12D grind for steep players. Haven't had a lot of success with that in people who are a little shallower with the wedges. The mill grind 4, they added their LBV grind, and I think it comes in at 7 bounce.
Okay.
But it's worked just a little better for people that are shallower. I don't know if that leading edge just sits a little lower with how they, press their hands or the lack thereof. But, and same thing with maybe just the micro grooves as well, just adding a little bit more friction to that ball, getting a little bit more spin. But no, that one's been really good for me. I mean, it's tough this year in Minnesota. We've had so much rain. Low bounce wedges are, regardless of who you are, going to be a little tougher to use this year. But even that 7 bounce still has enough, bounce to it to where we're not going to have to worry about chunking that as much.
Yeah.
But that one's been great. And then the addition of the low bounce K to the Vokey line, one of my favorites. But that one's been working really well, especially for shallow players that kind of just want to hit square shots. Sits super low, and all you have to do is just swing and it's there. So
yeah, I'm the player who, for better or worse, I use my 60-degree for everything inside. Call it 90 yards, 100 yards, and so because of that, I use the 8 bounce M grind, which little versatility. I mean, I'm pretty much always trying to open that face a little bit around the green, and so that's really nice for me, because that typically then I'm trying to hit something really finessed, probably sometimes to my detriment of trying to get too fancy with it. But then I go up to a 12S, I believe it is, with my 56, my 52, where most of the time that's a full shot or something where I come in a little steeper. But it does just show kind of the importance that you got to at least think about that and how you use your wedges to make sure you're getting as close to consistent center contact as we can. So
exactly right.
Lastly here, Max, as we start to wrap up, just kind of the last couple segments with you, we've talked a lot about just the different swing dynamics golfers can have. Why in general is it important for maybe someone is watching this or listening to this and they just never thought about the attack angle as a big important part of why they need to be fit for clubs? I guess could you maybe talk to that person just quickly as we sign off as to why they should be getting fit for their clubs based on their attack angle?
100%. I mean, just the what we've just talked about, how different, if somebody's swinging shallow, they deliver the club with more loft than normal, or if they're swinging steep, they deliver it with less loft. If you're looking at irons, 7 irons range from 28 degrees to 36 degrees now. So if you just, how would you know? It's like you said, if you don't have a TrackMan, you don't know what your attack angle is, and you don't necessarily know what is best fit for you. So just getting in on that TrackMan, seeing average attack angle, dynamic loft, it'll make a world of difference just to get people hitting it into the correct launch windows, spin windows, and all those things to just better dial in the game of golf, make it more fun.
Yeah. I mean, all of a sudden, maybe that bunker that you can't carry from 160 yards, now maybe you can, because you have a little higher launch and you're able to hit the window. We talk a lot about windows here.
We do.
The window that you need. So, well, Max, thank you for joining. This has been awesome to get that discussion. before we sign off, I'll tell golfers, go get fit, schedule a fitting with someone like Max, and he'll dial in your iron game based on, or any of your equipment based on your attack angle.
Absolutely. We'll see you soon.
Yeah, so that was Second Swing Master Fitter Max Busch sitting down with Drew talking the best clubs. I think the most interesting part that stuck out to me was the fact that the Ping G440 Hybrid was both a best for steep attack angles and shallow attack angles. So really interesting to see that dynamic in a club. And obviously Ping's done a very good job with their hybrids. They're a Fitter's Choice winner for us once again. Very popular. Super easy to hit, and so did think that was interesting that it kind of fits both golfers, which speaks to the playability about that club. And how about the Srixon ZXI fairway woods? Srixon irons were so good on the steep attack angles. To see their fairway woods be a great option for the shallow attack angles, really interesting there. And of course, if you've been paying attention to Srixon, Ryan Fox hit maybe one of the best 3 woods of your life with the Srixon ZXI to help set up his win at the RBC Canadian Open this year. So really good stuff from Max. We do have Mr. Kevin Kraft going to be joining the show here soon. He's actually in town this week filming content, so keep an eye out for that. And we caught up with LPGA player Kate Smithstroh. So we got some more great stuff coming up here on the Second Swing Thoughts podcast, so stay tuned. But now let's go back to the Open. Drew and I have been doing kind of this year-long competition where, if we did it for the Players, the Masters, PGA Championship, U.S. Open, and now the Open Championship, where we get 6 players to complete our roster. You get to pick from 6 different pools of players. It's all based on their tournament odds. So obviously the top 10 favorites are all in one pod. Then you got 11 to 20. And so on, and then the last group is just the rest of the field. So we each get to pick one golfer from each of these categories, each of these sections, and then we use runyourpool.com to kind of track our scores. And I'm up 3-1 in the season-long series, so Drew needs a win here. As I'm sure we'll do some more stuff here to kind of close the season, but Open Championship time, so let's go through our picks. In the first pool, Drew went with Victor Hovland. Of course, he had a pretty good finish there at the Scottish Open. Victor's been playing much better this year after he really struggled last year. So good to see him. Drew is staying with a couple picks from his U.S. Open picks. He's going Bobby McIntyre, who obviously, is from Scotland, loves links golf, played pretty well at the U.S. Open. So he's playing good. He's got Justin Rose, another guy he chose for the U.S. Open. Of course, a former U.S. Open champion, an Englishman, runner-up at this year's Masters, losing kind of a heartbreaker to Rory there in a playoff. But Englishman there. And then not an Englishman, but Harris English. That's actually who I had picked in the U.S. Open for his 4th pick. And then he's going with a Northern Ireland native, Tom McKibben, for pick number 5. He's a live golfer, was very successful on the DP World Tour. Roy McIlroy, he's part of came from the same club, Holywood, there in Northern Ireland. So, kind of a young and upcoming golfer. Maybe you don't know a ton about him, but I think once you get to watch him, you can see why the guy's got some talent and why he's got some hype around him. And then staying with a live pick for his 6th pick, Drew is going with Mark Leishman, the Australian. Now for my picks, I'm going Jon Rahm in the first pool. Jon Rahm's been playing very well this year, both on the live tour, and he's shown up much, much better in the majors than he did a year ago. And he's had quite a bit of success recently at the Open with a couple top 10 finishes here in the last 2 years. He's, Jon Rahm, if you don't watch, live or not, he's still one of the top 5 players in the world. He kind of can do a little bit of everything. He's coming off a runner-up finish at the live event at Valderrama. So coming in form, has some history here. That's why I went with him. And then I just went with ball striker in the next category. I went Colin Morikawa, a former Open champion, so he's won over in these elements. Having a solid year. He's still kind of missing that win, but usually someone you can count on to kind of be hanging around the leaderboard come Sunday. And then my next 2 picks, I'm kind of just going with gut feelings based on Ryder Cup ambitions. I'm going Patrick Reed. Of course, he's been playing very well at the majors this year, but the fact that he knows he has to kind of auto-qualify probably to make the Ryder Cup maybe he could be a captain's pick, especially with a strong showing here. But if he wins the Open, he pretty much guarantees himself a spot there. And for a guy who has had a lot of success at the Ryder Cup, I just have a feeling he's got a little more juice to him to try and win this. And then I'm going with the captain, Keegan Bradley. A decent showing at the U.S. Open there. But Keegan, he said he would only play in the Ryder Cup if he auto-qualifies. I still think that's the wrong decision. But an Open Championship win would pretty much clinch a spot for him, and then he wouldn't have to worry about that. So I think both those guys kind of with their Ryder Cup ambitions, I think they play well. And then I'm going with Daniel Berger for my 5th pick. Just an all-around great golfer, really good ball striker. I kind of look at, strokes gained on the approach for the Open. Tee to green's very good, but the approach, being accurate with your irons, your wedges, your woods, hybrids, whatever you're hitting is going to be super important just because of the way these greens over there in Northern Ireland are. So that's going to be key. And then my last pick is Matthew Jordan. Maybe you don't know him, but he's played in the last 2 Opens, and he's been a top 10 finish in both of them. So he's on the DP World Tour, maybe a little more unknown, but a guy who's played very well in this specific event. And that's why I went with him. So those are mine and Drew's picks. Let us know who you think made the better selections down in the comments. Or, send us your picks. Who do you think are kind of some top players you're expecting and maybe a few sleepers? But, yeah, should be a great week. Love the Open. Can't wait. I think my favorite part, too, is you get to watch it in the morning, right? You wake up and golf's on. Nothing better. So that wraps up our Open Championship picks. On the YouTube side, we've had a lot of swing reports coming out on all these new clubs, so make sure you check those out. We've had some club builds. You saw some IDI builds for Austin Eckroat last Sunday. We got some more tour truck stuff coming up on the channel as well. Of course, with Kevin Kraft in town, keep your eye out for a bunch of comparisons. You've seen all these new launches. Well, now we're going to go compare them, and who better to test them and provide his insights than Kevin Kraft himself. So follow us along on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button. Make sure you see that. Then on the second side, all those clubs we've mentioned, the Titleist T-Series, Ping I-240, Cali Apex AI-150, and more. Go get fit. Go see if these are a fit for your game. Dial in, not only the right head, but find the right shaft, loft, lie angles, everything you need to just help give you a little more consistency in your game. Everyone can benefit from it. It's not just for elite players. So make sure you do that. You'll love the difference. Also, check out our July Summer Major contest. You can enter until Sunday night. We're giving away over $3,500 worth in prizes. First place prize, custom fit set of irons and drivers. So check our social media channels. They'll have the link to our website where you can enter that contest. And hopefully you can be one of our lucky 23 winners or 28 winners. You got 3 club prizes, 25 gift cards. So enter now. And then speaking of giveaways, we always run some, little daily giveaways for each major. We got some cool stuff coming your way for 3 of the rounds for sure. Working on a 4th option here. So keep your eye out for some social media giveaways as well. And, as always, make sure you hit that subscribe button here on YouTube. Subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast platform, wherever you are. Follow us on our social media channels. And, we're always open to ideas and suggestions of what you want us to talk about, whether it's between Drew and I, or if you want us to, ask our fitters questions or test stuff on a YouTube channel. So always be free to kind of share some thoughts on whether it's on the podcast here and our social media posts. We love hearing from you golfers. So thanks for tuning in for another episode of the Second Swing Thoughts podcast, and enjoy Open Championship Week. We'll see you next time.